Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're unpacking something that is deeply frustrating, incredibly common, and honestly super misunderstood. You know that paralyzing, totally blank feeling when someone asks you a completely simple question? Just, what do you want? It happens when you're staring down a giant restaurant menu, right? Or worse, scrolling through Netflix for, 45 minutes? Until your takeout is literally ice cold because you just cannot decide what to watch? Or, zooming out, maybe you hit this wall when you're at a major crossroads with your career or your relationships. You try to look inward to find an answer, some kind of gut feeling, and nothing, just blank space, pure static. Well, today we're going to use the research to look at the psychology behind this whole I don't know what I want thing, and we're going to map out exactly why your brain is doing this to you.
Now, if you're tuning into this, I really want to speak directly to you for a second. I know the feeling that comes with this question. It isn't just confusion, is it? It's usually heavy with a ton of guilt. I mean, you look around and see friends, coworkers, partners, and they all seem to just move through life with this sharp, clear compass of desire. They know exactly what their favorite foods are, their ideal vacations, their firm career boundaries, and sitting there, you might feel this deep sense of inadequacy, just thinking, why don't I know what I want? Why am I so indecisive? Am I just fundamentally broken? It is ridiculously easy to internalize this lack of preference as some massive personality flaw. You start believing you're just a go-with-the-flow person to a total fault, or, that you're just being difficult. But I need you to hold on to that feeling of guilt for a moment, because we're about to completely flip it on its head.
Because the source material we're digging into today reveals a completely different reality. Your chronic indecision, that vast, empty space where your desire should be, it is not a personality flaw at all. It's not a sign of weakness. The mystery culprit here is actually something called learned disconnection. And what is so fascinating and honestly so relieving about this concept is how it reframes that blankness. It tells us that your inability to know what you want is actually a brilliant, albeit totally disruptive psychological adaptation. Your brain is functioning exactly the way it was trained to function under very specific circumstances.
To really understand this, we have to look at the exact mechanism behind it, which is preference suppression. This is defined as the psychological adaptation of disconnecting from your own desires or needs in order to survive external pressures. Notice the absolutely crucial word there, survive. The human brain is the ultimate survival machine. If expressing your preference or having a need or stating a desire historically caused conflict or danger or maybe a loss of connection, well, your brain simply decided to shut that system down. It's so much safer to just not have a preference than to have one and be punished or abandoned for it. It's a highly effective shield. Basically, it's emotional armor you wore to navigate really difficult external pressures.
And that's suppression over time? That leads us directly to learned disconnection. This is the acquired state of being completely severed from your own internal signals and preferences. Again, notice the key word acquired. You were not born this way. You weren't born without an internal compass. You acquired this state. You were severed from your internal signals through repeated real-world experiences. And, while that might sound a little heavy at first, it's actually the absolute best news you could possibly get today. Because if a state is acquired, if it's something learned by the brain, then thanks to neuroplasticity, it can absolutely be unlearned. You can reconnect the exact wires that had to be cut for your emotional or physical safety.
So, you're probably wondering, how do those wires get cut in the first place? Let's break down what the research calls the script. These are the specific environments and emotional burdens that practically force us to disconnect. First up is chronic caretaking. If you were the emotional anchor for your family growing up, or maybe a parentified child, you learned super early on that your needs were secondary to stabilizing someone else. Second, harsh environments. This could mean a really critical home, a volatile relationship, or even a toxic workplace where simply having a dissenting opinion painted a massive target on your back. And third, constant adaptation. Just the sheer exhaustion of having to act like a chameleon to fit in, to be loved, or just to be accepted. If your survival literally depended on blending in perfectly, having a strong, distinct preference was an absolute liability.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how this suppression compounds over the course of a lifetime. It almost always starts in childhood as a literal necessity, usually in harsh or unpredictable environments. You learn to stay quiet just to stay safe. But then, in adolescence, it morphs into chronic caretaking. Maybe you are mediating family disputes or managing all your friend group's drama, completely ignoring your own teenage milestones in the process. By the time you reach adulthood, this isn't just a reaction anymore. It's your default operating system. You end up in a state of constant adaptation. It turns into this exhausting, everyday routine of walking into a room, scanning it for what everyone else wants, and then instantly becoming that exact thing. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate paradox of learned disconnection. Because if you struggle with knowing what you want, I guarantee you are highly skilled at knowing what everyone else wants, while simultaneously remaining totally unskilled at reading yourself. You are essentially a walking emotional radar dish. Seriously, you can walk into a room and instantly feel the micro-expressions, the weird tensions, the unspoken needs of your boss, your partner, even a complete stranger on the street. Your perceptive skills are off the charts. It's just that the radar dish is permanently pointed outward. When you try to spin it around and point it inward to read your own signals, there's just no bandwidth left. The whole system is completely uncalibrated for the self.
Okay, we've covered a lot of clinical ground here so far, from preference suppression to the whole compounding timeline of adaptation. I want to intentionally slow our pacing down right now. We're going to move away from the mechanics of why your brain does this, and we're stepping into a profound paradigm shift. This is the moment where we take all of that data we just talked about and translate it into a completely new way of viewing your own identity, your past, and your capacity to make choices moving forward.
Listen to this reframe from the research and really let it sink in for a second. You're not confused, you're unpracticed at listening to your own signals. I mean, this is the ultimate reframe. You do not lack a core identity. You are not a chronically confused person. You are simply out of practice. Think of your internal preference system like a muscle that's been in a cast for 20 years, all while you were busy using your other arm to lift heavy emotional weights for everyone else around you. When that cast finally comes off, that muscle isn't going to be able to lift a heavy weight right away. It's going to tremble. It's going to feel super weak. It needs physical therapy. It needs practice. And this is such a liberating reality. You just need to start small, deliberate practice to tune back into a frequency you've been forced to ignore for years.
Which brings us to our final takeaway. If knowing what you want is simply a matter of practice, well then the practice has to start right now, in the physical present. So I'm going to leave you with this lingering question. What is one signal your body is sending you right now? Don't try to figure out your 10-year career plan or whether you should move across the country, none of that. Just pause. Are you thirsty? Are your shoulders tense? Do you maybe just need to stand up and stretch? Acknowledge that tiny micro-preference. Honor it. Because that is the very first step in unlearning the disconnection, reclaiming your signals, and finally figuring out exactly what it is you want. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.